Have you ever wished to be someone unshakable, someone who doesn't bend under criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal? Have you dreamed of the day when the silent pain inside finally stops? The anguish that lingers even when you pretend everything is fine on the outside? Maybe you're exhausted from trying to please everyone, from holding up an image of constant strength, when all you truly wanted was a moment of rest. To step back from the pressure of always being untouchable. But here's a truth few will tell you. As long as you run from pain, it will rule you. As long as you numb yourself, hide from discomfort, or build walls for protection, you remain a prisoner of everything around you, the words that sting, the actions that disappoint, the silences that weigh heavy inside. And this is not weakness. This is human reality. The only difference is that some are better at pretending than others. Carl Jung, one of the great voices in psychology, once said, "We are not what happens to us, but what we choose to become." That's the key. Strength doesn't come from shielding yourself or becoming cold and indifferent. It comes from facing what affects you in the dark and bringing it into the light. True resilience is not the absence of pain, but the awareness of who you are, even when you're wounded. If you're still here, it's not by accident. This message is for you, the one tired of hurting, tired of feeling powerless, as if others always hold control over your emotions. I want to show you it doesn't have to stay this way. But to change, you must face truths that might sting. And for the first time, that pain may actually free you. Let's begin. You believe the source of your suffering lies outside, in other people's actions, careless words, abandonment, or betrayal. But here's the harsh truth. None of these have power unless there's already an open wound inside you. What hurts is not the act itself, but what it awakens within, the story you attach to it, the old trauma never addressed, the emptiness you cover with strength and pride. Jung showed us that the pain triggered by the outside world only mirrors what remains unresolved inside us. That's why some can endure devastation with clarity, while others collapse over a single comment. It's not about what happens, it's about where it lands within you. And here comes a difficult truth. You still suffer because deep down, you believe you can control how the world treats you. You try to be good enough, strong enough, kind enough, hoping it will shield you from harm. But control is an illusion. Clinging to it keeps you in constant tension, predicting the unpredictable, avoiding the unavoidable. Do you want to stop suffering? Then stop protecting yourself from suffering. What you need is not more control, but more awareness. As long as you believe others must change for you to heal, you'll remain trapped by their actions. Freedom begins the moment you see that what comes from outside only has power if it finds an echo within you. This is where the true battlefield lies, the unconscious. What you ignore, what you don't understand, ends up controlling you. And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next part. Prepare to go deeper, because real transformation starts there. If this resonates with you, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. The greatest lie you've been told is that you're in full control of your life. Wake up, you're not. Not as long as you live on autopilot, reacting without knowing why, feeling without understanding where it comes from, making choices you later sabotage. Jung made it clear. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that is what's happening now. The pain you feel, the anger that erupts, the sadness that arrives without warning, they aren't random. They are signals from the forgotten parts of you, waiting to be heard. Repressed. Jung called this hidden territory the unconscious. And it isn't a fog of vague thoughts. It's an active force, a system of memories, traumas, desires, and fears you refuse to face, yet which keep deciding how you feel and how you act. You wonder why certain words cut you while others shrug them off. Those words strike living wounds inside you, wounds you never confronted, only shoved under the psychological rug. Now you keep tripping over them. Jung said we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not free, it suffocates. So what have you been doing? Judging yourself, repressing, silencing, hoping that will solve anything. It doesn't. The unconscious doesn't vanish because you ignore it. It finds more dangerous roots, toxic relationships you replay, self-sabotaging habits you can't break, anxieties that surface when everything seems fine. This is not bad luck. It's your unconscious trying to be heard while you stay asleep. If you want to stop being hurt, stop fleeing the inside of you. As long as your unconscious runs the show, you're a puppet of your emotions. The harder you shield yourself from outside pain, the more exposed you become to inner pain. There is a way out, and it's not defense. It's integration. Becoming untouchable isn't resistance. It's deep self-knowledge. That's what we'll examine next. What it truly means to be unshaken and why strength comes from acceptance, not armor. Most people think the antidote to hurt is shutting down. They build walls, wear masks, develop emotional armor, and pretend nothing affects them. I don't care, they say, while bleeding inside. The problem was never feeling. It's not knowing what you're feeling or why. That happens when you don't know yourself. Jung warned, learn every theory, master every technique, but when you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. The soul you hide behind a controlled, invulnerable persona is screaming to be seen. Emotional strength isn't coldness. It's not ignoring pain, avoiding conflict, or playing indifferent. It's about integration, bringing into light what you buried in darkness. You don't become untouchable by building barriers. You become untouchable when nothing outside can unsettle what you've already embraced within. Integrate your shadows, fears, flaws, insecurities, and you stop reacting to every trigger. You choose. You're no longer an emotional puppet. That is true freedom. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Not what others expect, not who you think you must be to belong, but what emerges from the meeting of light and shadow, ego and unconscious. Individuation isn't perfection. It's integration. You don't need to be better. You need to be whole. Here's the secret no one told you. The more you run from pain, the more it chases you. The more you avoid being affected, the more fragile you become. But when you face your wounds and accept all of you, the beautiful and the ugly, the noble and the shameful, nothing outside can dismantle you. This path demands courage. The courage to look inward, to drop the masks, to feel. Because inside pain lives the key to transformation. That's what we'll discover next. How suffering, far from being the enemy, can become the gateway to genuine strength. Let's go deeper, and this time without fear. You learned to hate pain early. You were taught suffering equals weakness, tears are pointless, feeling makes you vulnerable. So you ran, avoid, deny, distract. But the more you flee, the more pain morphs and returns as anxiety, anger, apathy, boredom, or self-destructive urges you don't recognize. Ignored pain doesn't disappear. It tunnels until one day everything collapses. Jung saw suffering differently. He called pain the messenger of the soul, the unconscious's alarm, the language your whole self uses to get your attention. He said depression can be like a lady in black. If she appears, don't push her away. Invite her in, offer a seat, listen. But you don't listen. You silence yourself, keep busy, numb out. You do everything to avoid sitting with the message. You avoid looking at what truly matters. What is this pain trying to reveal? The truth is, suffering hurts most because you are still at war with yourself. Part of you longs to grow, while another part clings to what is familiar. Inside, something calls for transformation, but the ego, used to control, tries to silence that call. Pain is born in this inner conflict. Growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs, cutting toxic ties, and allowing what no longer serves you to end. These are forms of mourning, an inner death and rebirth. Yet it is in this ruin that something new can emerge. When everything in you is stripped away, when certainties collapse and pain exposes your vulnerability, you finally see who you are without masks, without roles, without defenses. At that point, suffering becomes sacred because it brings you face to face with the only force that can free you, yourself. Jung understood this. He taught that suffering is not failure, but part of the process. Pain is not the end. It is the beginning of the journey toward individuation. The challenge is that most people give up before crossing this dark valley. They flee, distract themselves, or return to the surface. But not you. If you've made it this far, it means you are ready to cross. And in the next stage, we'll explore how this path unfolds, how individuation, though difficult and at times isolating, is what truly sets you free. Few have the courage to start the path of individuation, and fewer still to complete it. This road doesn't offer comfort, guarantees, or protection for the ego. It dismantles it. Jung described individuation as becoming who you are. But this first requires unlearning who you thought you were, and that can hurt more than any external rejection. You begin to see that much of what defined you was an illusion. You are not your achievements, your traumas, or the image you built to be loved, admired, or respected. These were survival strategies, not life. Individuation is the call beyond survival. It pushes repressed and distorted parts of you to the surface. Jung said individuation requires dissolving the persona, the mask of social convenience. In other words, you must strip away what you show the world to uncover what lies beneath. This is how you become untouchable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you have already faced the fire. You have confronted your shadows, your shame, your anger, your dependency, and said, "I see you." You no longer control me. That clarity, the lucidity in facing your own darkness, gives you strength no one can take. You no longer need everyone's approval. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to appear strong because you know who you are. True emotional armor isn't a shell, it's a core. It is the integration of all your parts into a conscious center that stays steady through storms. You may feel pain, but it doesn't break you. You may be hurt, but you don't lose yourself because you are whole. This depth has a cost. Loneliness. Not because you'll be alone, but because few can walk this path. Most remain trapped in masks and fear. When you free yourself, you naturally create distance. But this is not rejection, it is growth. You step away not out of pride, but because you no longer belong where you once hid. And this leads us to the final stage, consciousness as your shield. Strength does not protect you, clarity does. Here is the truth. Nothing outside can stop your suffering if you remain unconscious of what happens within. Words will still wound, rejection will still sting, and loss will still weaken you until you awaken. Awakening is not a sudden event, but a daily choice to look within, even when it hurts. To take responsibility for what you feel without blaming others, the past, or fate. Jung put it clearly, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. Your whole life, you resisted. The fear of not being enough, the emptiness of rejection, the pain of loneliness, the anguish of invisibility. You hid, silenced yourself, tried to control everything, to be perfect, to appear strong. But all of this has only left you tired, fighting against the world and against yourself. Now you know, true emotional resilience is not hardness, it is clarity. It's not about building armor, but about expanding awareness. When you recognize your triggers, patterns, and wounds, the actions of others lose their power. You still feel, but you don't collapse. You still suffer, but you don't lose yourself. That changes everything. Protection doesn't come from avoiding life, but from entering it deeply. Those who live on the surface are shaken by every wave. Those who dive discover silence, stability, and strength in the depths. That's where you are heading. And when you live from this place of integration, presence, and acceptance, the world may try to knock you down, but it can't find where to strike. If this message resonated, write in the comments, "I choose awareness." Let's create a movement of people ready to live truthfully, not just pretend to be strong. And don't forget, the next video continues this journey. True transformation only begins when you keep going. See you there.